is freedom. We look at freedom as doing whatever we want. Freedom really came when you couldn't do everything. You could have, but you didn't.
Grew up in a very particular place that was not conducive to any form of success at all. Non-motivated. Increase my value by increasing my skill set.
Yes, for you today, this guy right here I've known for several years. He's a serial entrepreneur, a family man, a staple in the community, and our modern day Mr. Clean. My man, aka JJ, James Durmon. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, man, you created Freedom Gym.
Appreciate the introduction, by the way.
Yeah.
Sounded good.
Yeah, that's what I do, baby. So you created Freedom Gym, right?
Correct.
You started with Freedom Industries. I want to take you back to a story years ago. I met you in the gym through a friend, and you weren't the same JJ that you are now.
Hope not.
You had the little gut there.
Hopefully I got a little better.
Yeah, you had the little gut. But something that sticks out to me more than anything is we were working out for a little bit, and you told me, I'm going to start a new gym. And it's funny because in situations like that where, people say a lot of things.
Sure.
Right? And we were working out at what was Gold's Gym before. This is before COVID happened.
Back then it was Gold's.
And I tend to believe in people's dreams, right? I tend to believe that. But saying it and doing it is one thing. You're now working on your second gym.
Right.
You now have a drink, Synergy, that's come out. What I want to ask you is, take me back to your childhood. Where did this motivation come from? Where did you get the desire? Where did you get the audacity to even try something like this? Because I'm seeing all these people come to the gym. I remember signing up on day one, right? And you just started, but now it's flocking to the gym. It's gotten so big that you got to open up your same gym. I want to know, what was your motivation to even thinking that you could do something like this? Where did it start at?
So, there's two parts about my childhood I want to bring up, because a lot of stories start with a troubled childhood. Success stories, do they not? And so, I actually didn't have, my parents made good money, lived in a good house, had good clothes. I didn't have any family style traumatic issues or problems coming up. My problems actually became my problems along the way after all that. And I want to add, I did grow up in a very particular time frame, in a very particular place that was not conducive to any form of success at all. Non-motivating. So I grew up in Vidor, Texas in the 90s, which is, if you look it up and you read about it, it is, at that particular time, early 90s, was the worst place to be in America, I guarantee you. Yeah. It was blacks versus white, love versus hate, it was machine guns at school, it was people catching things on campus on fire, it was it was operated under security surveillance, it was integration, segregation, it was everything that you just read about nowadays. People don't actually live the same aspect of it anymore, even though they still bring it up and they talk about it. But I lived in that time frame, which was very crazy as a young teenager, because I didn't really get it. I didn't really get what racism was. I didn't really get what any of that stuff was. To me, it actually just looked more like hate, general hate. These people hated everybody. It didn't matter if you're actually black or white. And so that's actually what I came from. But luckily, my parents were smart enough and had the ability that we moved away. And that's where I actually got better. Because I wasn't going anywhere. I was a D student in Vidor, Texas. I was over there manipulating my grades on the report card type kid, right? Because I was doing so bad. I just felt bad about everything.
Which doesn't surprise me though too, because how they always say, the best entrepreneurs are the C, D students.
Yeah.
And
I think that's true. I'm just associating with that was the problem I dealt with as a person though. I didn't deal with problems like that at home. I didn't really have any home problems. I was wearing Michael Jordans. I had Zekai Ricci and Jabot clothing, right? And so we weren't in a poverty type situation. I wasn't lacking money. My dad always made a lot of money doing heavy construction work. industrial, so there was always money in that field. So we didn't really go without. You know, we lived in a nice brick home. We lived on a piece of property. We had all these things. We had nice vehicles, this and that. And I'm not saying like upper echelon, but at the same time, like I wasn't lacking on the personal side from a family traumatic. You know, come from nothing. I never say I come from nothing. What I want to add to that though is when I got past all that, like past the high school stages, because I was a college dropout. When I went to, my dad would have paid for a full ride for me, so that wasn't even a problem either. I actually had college at my fingertips, but I chose like college just wasn't for me. I wasn't the guy that was just gonna go and just do great in college, and I was motivated to do so, and I didn't even have sights on that type of stuff. It really didn't even make sense to me, honestly, as a youngster. And so I went to college for like 2 months and just figured out it just was not for me, and I just bailed off on it.
So would you say that, so taking to when you're in college, like when did you get this desire that, when did you know that you wanted to even be an entrepreneur? Like when did you, was it the seeing what was going on in your family? Was it seeing the racism, the places you grew up? What inspired you to say, I want better, I want more?
I think it backs up to even younger than that because for some reason, and I just remember little intricate moments where I just realized, like, you know what, and I was thinking, like, it's weird to say, I was thinking at like 10, 12, 14 years old, those time frames. I really just had a vision, and I thought it would be cool to just own the things that you did in life. Like, I wanted to own a restaurant because, you know, we eat every day, right? I wanted to own car washes because I wanted to have clean cars. Like, I wanted to own these things, you know, and I had a fitness lifestyle, and I just was gravitated to it because I had family that was the most unhealthiest people I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, I don't want that, so I'm going to go the opposite of that. Yeah. And if that's your definition of not being healthy, I want the definition of being healthy.
Yeah.
And so I chose the fit side. My whole entire family on that side was unfit. They barely even made it to 60s and 70s, some of them, you know, of age. And I was like, I'm not going to adopt that type of lifestyle. Even though this is my family, I'm going the other direction, bro. I'm not following that. Because I didn't believe in that. I believed in something bigger than that. And so I seen it at a young age. And I was probably just because I was exposed to some of the downsides of it, I guess. Mm-hmm. I wanted the upside. And so for me, I just gravitated to staying in the gym, staying around people that were active, staying around people that were fit, and people that were, and I'm talking about teenagers, like people that were just pushing the limits on just being even though we didn't know what we was doing, they were still getting better all the time.
Right.
Like I wanted to be, whether it was athletes, whether it was whatever, right? And so we're still talking about high school, so it's like nothing means anything yet. You know what I mean?
It's hard to frame it, but you're making you feel like you're.
But
making
I just wanted to be around people that were opposite of what I did not like.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't like people that were, you know, drinking or doing drugs or going out and doing stupid stuff or tearing stuff up in town and just being, you know, crazy adolescent type people, I was like, I want to be over here with the people that's doing things that make sense. So a lot of that stuff didn't make sense to me.
That's always been in you. That's all.
Yeah.
So, you know, that reminds me of a statement that Ray Lewis said. He said he figured out what success was by looking at what the majority of people did, and he did the opposite.
Yeah.
You know. So talk to me about. So we're still in your childhood. We're making progress. Who's your inspiration at this time? You know, we always have somebody that we like to look up to. You know, for the athletes, for me, I love Ken Griffey Jr. You know, to play baseball. Obviously, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant for me really was who I really, you know, rest in peace to Kobe. But he was the one I really, because I always wanted to go pro out of high school, and he went pro. You're always looking for something that you can relate to, right? So who's that inspiration?
So I was a big Jordan fan back then, but at the same time, like, I didn't really know Jordan. I knew the basketball player. I knew the statistics. I knew the games, but I didn't know Jordan. I didn't know the story behind it. But I just knew that, you know, to be great, you had to work at something really hard.
Yeah.
And those are the things I looked at because, you know, you didn't have all these documentaries come out until after all that. You know, and you didn't have access to a lot of that information until now after all that. You know, like you got the movies and you got the documentaries and you didn't really have all that stuff back then. I didn't have access. Of course, you didn't have the internet and all that stuff yet either, so, or barely. And I'm I'm gonna say my biggest, and it took me a while to realize this, but my biggest inspiration was actually my dad.
Mm.
And it wasn't because he was just some success story or anything like that. It was simply because of work ethic. He was a guy that was capable of doing whatever it took. And that's the part I learned how to understand really fast, really young, is that if we needed something, he worked his ass off and he got it, period.
Okay.
You know, and I'm not saying we was driving Lambos at 14 years old. I'm not saying that.
Man.
But like we had everything that mama needed, we had everything I needed, and he worked his ass off, and he's always that guy that's the first one to show up, last one to leave mentality, man.
That's huge.
And so I adopted that, and that my work ethic comes from my dad.
Yeah, I see you working in the gym with your son now. I think that's a huge influence on any young man to see it in action. It reminds me of what Kobe was saying when he had his daughters. He said he would get them up in the morning, and he would take them to work with him so that they could see, you know, what was happening.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a story of Tim Grover, who just happens to be Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan's personal coach at the time.
Yep.
And he's a big-time public speaker now. And he tells a story about how his daughter came to him and was like, "Daddy, you know, where are you going?" And he said, "Babe, I gotta work." And she said, "Why?" He said, "Because I gotta put the food on the table." And she said, "Daddy, if I start eating less, would you be able to spend more time at home?" And that, of course, you know, that hits is like, God.
Of course it does. Yeah.
And he said, of course, like a movie, you think I'd pack my stuff up and stay home. And he said, no, I kept packing and I left. He said years later, his daughter came to him and thanked him because I guess she's a big-time successful entrepreneur herself, and she accredited it to seeing him operate in what he was designing, his purpose. And she said, had she not seen that, she would have never been able to do what she's doing now. So
I can actually relate to that pretty heavy because, and the reason why is because about somewhere around 13 years old, my dad started working out of town. He was local before all that, so the whole upcoming to that time frame, he was local in the plants and everything, right? But then opportunities came out for different versions of construction disciplines to like travel and make more money, you know, and the money would almost double basically. So like a lot of people just weren't saying no to that, especially at that time frame. So the finishing years of my high school / very small stint in college and all that stuff, my dad was actually out of town. And I can see where people get displaced about it a little bit, because it does feel awkward to not have a dad like at the football games, at the basketball games, because I did a lot of that stuff too.
Yep.
You know, and it was mostly driven by mom.
Yep.
Right? So mom was in the stands, mom was here, mom was there.
Shout out to the moms.
And keep in mind, mom worked a full-time job too, so don't discredit that.
Yeah.
She's retired now, and that's all good. But back then, it was everybody worked full-time, and so it took me a lot of years to really understand what my dad was doing. It really did.
Yeah.
Like I almost feel like
I hear that.
I hated it for a little while.
Yeah.
But then as I grew up, as I matured, and as I got into the same style of business, because I did start in construction after my little college thing, I went straight to construction with my dad, same job site. And then that's when I really started seeing, not experiencing the gone part, but seeing him in action as if he was gone. And so now I'm like, well, he's gone and I see what he's doing, but now I'm with him and I'm watching. And I'm like, this dude's like a construction superhero, bro. Like, this is the guy they go to when they need stuff, when things need to get done, when people got to work late, when people got to get in the trenches. Like, my dad was the guy they were going to. Those are the things I didn't see, though, when he was just gone and I was home. And so once I got to the experience and see exactly firsthand, quitting college and going to work and under his construction resources, right? So he got me a job. That's when it really started to make sense. I'm like, so this is what this dude's doing, and these are all the people relying on him, when I'm thinking he's just not at home. And that took me a lot of years to absorb, actually.
Yeah.
But the more I matured, the more I did the same thing, and the more I got into that, I started realizing, like, this dude did whatever it took to fucking take care of me and mom. And I'm only child, by the way. So, so that's when it really started resonating what work ethic really meant, and where it translate back to the family life.
Okay, good. Speaking of family life, because I wanna fast forward. So we're in college. You said next you get the construction job. You do very well as a single man, right? You're making a lot of money. Talk to me about that, because but later on you get married. But as we were saying before, there's a contrast there.
Yep.
Talk to me about the difference between you're married, single mother. You're successful as a single man, right? Were you running a company?
Single dad. Well, eventually I was a single dad.
Right.
Even before marriage, yes.
Which the ladies love. I mean, come on now, right? The ladies love that. You know, you're single, and you got the kid involved, and you're making money and doing your own man, and you got the kid. Come on.
Yeah.
So you do that, but you meet your wife. How does your life change after that? How does your business change? How does your mindset change into becoming the man you are now? Because I see what I see,
right,
but I don't know what came before that.
Right. Let me paint the picture a little bit. So after college, went to work. I went to work for many years. Okay, and the one thing I try to explain to people is that I didn't just work one thing and do one thing.
Okay.
I understood very quickly that if I was going to stick with construction, which I did, and build it into what I would consider back then, because I wasn't in the business yet, right?
Okay.
So to get me to that point, paint the picture. I started realizing very fast that if I wanted to make more money and make more money doing that and call that my career now, because I had to convince myself that I was going to do this, right? Because money is good, yes, but how do I turn it into an actual career that I can somewhat have passionate about and enjoy some of it, you know?
Yeah.
And for a very long time, I loved it. So I don't want to discredit the game. I loved construction for a very long time because I was good at it. And it became my natural born skill set. And so what I realized when I was on a construction project that I learned very quickly is everything is done in phases. And if you're a part of that phase, you're a part of the project. Meaning from start, it starts out just dirt work, excavation, could be going into carpentry, could be going into, rebar, concrete. And then next thing you know, here comes equipment, here comes cranes, here comes pipe fitters, here comes welders, here comes all this stuff, right? Okay, where if you're a carpenter, you were only there for 3 or 4 months. After everything was concreted and done, they really didn't need you no more, so here comes the layoff. Here comes the welders, the pipe fitters, everybody else that's got dropping equipment, crane operators, forklift, everybody. All the other mechanical things came along. So different phases I recognized, and I'm like, well, if I want to make more money, I wasn't actually bringing value as an individual just doing one thing. So I was like, well, let me learn this and this and this and this and this so I can work my way through the disciplines, all the phases of construction, and become more valuable by increasing my skill sets. And so that allowed me to make way more money than most people back then because I was on the job from the start to the finish. And then that's how I eventually got into management, is because, and this will get me to the business part, but I got into management because years and years and years after doing all that, it translated into, this is the guy we need to run the entire project from start to finish, because I knew all aspects of it. And I started getting certifications in all different aspects of it, started building my credentials in all different aspects of it. And so it wasn't hard for me to go resource a project that, I was told about or was advertised or whatever, and get in on it in an early stage, and then make the entire, sometimes 2 years. 2 years of nothing but working and making money without having to change anything, because I had increased my value by increasing my skill set. Simple as that.
I like that. Increase your value by increasing your skill set. For all you young entrepreneurs out there, we have to make sure that in order to make more money, we have to increase our value. We increase our value by increasing our skill sets. I love that, because Jim Rohn always talks about, he says the problem with people is we work harder on our jobs than we do on ourselves. And so many times we get in this job mentality where, Yeah, okay. Usually everybody starts off working at a job, right?
Yeah.
It works typically. Like very few people just go right into and never work for anybody. But it's getting out of that mentality, right?
Yeah.
So when did you get out of that mentality of, hey, there's more that needs to be done?
So I want to touch on that. So when I increased my skill sets, that's when I realized that working on myself made sense.
Okay.
Because the projects wasn't changing. I mean, these are engineered projects. I'm not going to change the project. So the project doesn't bring me value.
Okay.
The time of the project is valuable.
Okay.
But in order for me to get there, I had to bring more value.
Okay.
That's where, when I was young, I started understanding that the more I brought to the table, now it's all translated differently now because we've learned a lot of things in the past 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But like personal development and all that, that wasn't, nobody talked about that 30 years ago. You know what I mean? So
Tony Robbins was the only one.
yeah, I know, like one guy, right? So now there's 1,000, probably 2,000 people. But so back then, I organically figured out that the more I brought to the table, the longer I could work on a project, the more valuable I came to the project, the more money I made. It was a very simple concept, but it was literally written right in front of my face, and I just recognized it, like organically. I'm like, well, if I can do that, that, and that, they need me for 9 months, right? And so eventually worked my way up through management, got into a bunch of different systematic stuff with others, like power plants, natural gas plants, stuff like that. And I got with some really big companies that I ended up getting corporate status with. And I worked my way all the way up as high as I could into corporate status, making a lot of money. Heavy, multiple six figures a year for a lot of years. And I got as high as I could possibly go. And at that point, the business notion started kicking in because I was like, well, I'm traveling around, I'm working my ass off, I'm not married yet. I do have a child to support, so I've got some motivation and some drive behind me, right? So I'm using some willpower here because I have a responsibility. And so it's like I started getting hints about it from other people, but then I also started thinking about it myself. Like, if I'm going to do all this work and manage all this stuff and be responsible for all this stuff, why don't I just do it for myself?
Speaking of yourself, how has your wife impacted your life and business? How has she impacted that?
My wife has literally, so if I drew a map out, right, of my life, it would be dots all over the place, like this. I'm good at this, and I can do that, and I can do that, and I can talk this. But my wife coming to the table has literally taken all those dots and put them in a straight line for me. And so in my world, I just consider that I became extremely focused on my path and my goal.
Yeah.
Because you got to understand, when all these dots are all over the place, you're looking this way, that way, and just 10% here, 10% there, 5% here. But in reality is, when she came into my life, before that, I was like, I call it a pinball machine. And some of it was forced, and some of it was gravitational, right? So I was forcing different things, different directions, and I was bouncing off this, I was bouncing off that. And it just felt like a pinball machine running around. And I'm not saying all of it was bad. There was a lot of it was good. I was making a lot of money, yes. I was traveling, yes. I was seeing a lot, gaining a lot of experience, yes. But there was so much more to the table that I was missing. I was missing time with my kid. I was a single dad at the time before that. And then when I married her, she had 2 kids. So we're a blended family. And I was like, well, if I continue this, I'm going to miss time with her, 2 kids, and my kid. Right? So total 3 kids now. And so eventually she came in the picture. I started seeing this alignment that started making sense to me that I'd never seen before in my life. And once I realized that I needed to put some sort of play into action that would allow me to either get closer to home or just not have to work personally in my business. So I wanted to transition on my business. I wanted to work on my business, not in my business anymore. And so it was a transitional phase where I just hired people to take my place, and I basically forced my clients to not want JJ no more and molded them to just want my company. And I was able to put managers in place of me. And so when I made those transitions, I like to brag about it now, but I've been home for 8 years and I ain't left yet.
Man,
I can count on one hand how many times I've been away from my wife.
Wow.
Overnight in 8 years.
Wow. I would say that would impact the marriage very good.
And so it's done us very well.
Yeah. Wow.
It was another
Congratulations.
thing. Appreciate it. That's probably my biggest accomplishment, to be honest with you. You know, everybody wants to talk about money as an accomplishment. Money means shit to me when it comes to what I've been able to achieve just through redirecting and refocusing and repurposing my existence, basically.
I love how you talk about alignment, man. Because even though I know Scripture talks about where there is no, how can two walk together and not be in agreement? Mm-hmm. You know, in other words, we have to be in agreement. So it shows you're speaking how she aligned you. You were single, you were making money, but yet when you talked about her, you talked about her focusing your attention. Mm-hmm. And it makes so much sense because typically when you're single, and especially when you're taking on entrepreneurship, right? It's like we're always about freedom, right? Yep. We want freedom, and you named your gym mm-hmm. Freedom. But the reality is, how do we get freedom? It's the discipline. Mm-hmm. It's actually what we want is freedom, but what it costs us is the thing that chastens us. It ties us down. So like we look at freedom as doing whatever we want. But what you're telling me is that freedom really came when you couldn't do everything you wanted. Yep. Or more so, you could have, but you didn't.
So my industrial company is called Freedom Industrial Services, which is over 13 years ago now.
Talk to me about that. What does that represent?
I started it 13 years ago, and we still have it. It still runs today. We still run it. This is actually one of our offices up front. So we actually run it, every day. I think Freedom Industrial was my pursuit of freedom. Okay. I didn't have it yet. I thought I did. Because there were things, don't get me wrong, as a single dad, making a lot of money, running construction, traveling across the entire United States, working in 5, 6, 7 different states, year round. It seems like freedom. Because you really don't have to answer to nobody. You're making a lot of money. You're doing this. You're answering to the system, though. And that's the part I also did not like. I didn't like what I was becoming answering to the system.
Okay, talk to me about that. The system.
Eventually, it starts to control you. Okay. And we don't even realize it most of the time. It just happens. It's organically happening. The system's designed for that. And when I say the system, I'm talking about the clock in, clock out, okay. And the reset. I want to bring this up. And the reset every freaking Monday.
The rat race.
Most people wind down on Friday, reset on Monday. Yeah. Monday, what's the hardest day of the week?
Monday.
Why? Why does it have to be?
Because that's
because
the mindset.
We built it that way.
That's the mindset, right.
Yeah, we built it that way.
Yeah.
It's not my hardest day of the week anymore.
Saturday's the funnest day of the week, right?
Yeah.
But for an entrepreneur, Saturday's another day of the week that maybe...
That's the difference, is when you're an entrepreneur, every day's the same to me. So I don't care if it's Monday, Sunday, Saturday, Friday, it doesn't matter to me.
Mindset.
I have the freedom now to do whatever I want on Monday, Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't matter.
Interesting. So we're talking about mindset. And tell me something, what is... obviously we know that entrepreneurs, you go through things, and a lot of times, especially in society today, we have... this get-rich-quick society. We have this thing, guys seem to be getting famous super quick. The mentality, even on social media, you're wanting to post for it to go viral versus post for purpose and play the long game. Talk to me about what has been the hardest thing that you've had to overcome, or some of the hardest things you have to overcome in this journey, so that these guys can understand that, hey, this is something that is a risk. It's something that it creates freedom, but it's going to cost you something. What does it cost you?
Time.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of times, especially in the beginning, you're trading time for money.
In the beginning. That's not where we want to go, right?
No.
Okay.
You want to trade money for time.
Okay. We want to trade money for time.
Yeah.
So we don't want to trade time for money.
Time is the one thing you can't buy and you can't get back.
Okay.
There's no receipts on time, bro.
But we want to trade money for time. Tell me what that means to you.
So again, there's an offset because there's only so much time to make money,
Okay.
but you can always make money. It's not going to go anywhere.
You can always make money.
You can't always make time. And so I'm going to give you an example of where I lost my time. I didn't have custody of my kid for 14 years. I got 2 days a month for 14 years. That's not very much time. After 14 years, though, I went back. After I became who I needed to become, I went back and fought for my kid. And I got full custody ever since. Now he's 19 years old. Now he's in college at 19 years old. I got more time with him now in 5 years.
Interesting.
Because I fought for it. Now, granted, I had to build myself up. I had to make the money because fighting for a kid ain't cheap. Lawyers ain't cheap. I mean, everybody knows. You look it up. Fighting for a kid ain't cheap. Fighting for custody ain't cheap. Fighting legally, period. No matter what it is, ain't cheap.
That's right.
And it's a drawn out process. It's not always in a guy's favor. That's a fact. And so, when I was able to regain custody, it hit me like a ton of bricks in a good way. Because I realized in 1 year, just 1 year, I get more time with my kid than all 14 years I freaking lost, bro. Wow. So and that cuts every time I talk about it.
Got your time back. That's good. That's good. You know, as you're saying that, in my heart I hear that scripture where God talks about, he says, I'll restore the time. I'll redeem the time. Mm-hmm. So as you're saying that, that's what kind of came up in my mind where he talks about how redeem the time. Because we feel sometimes we go through regret and we feel like we're losing something. But just like when we go to a gym, which we're about to hit in a little bit, whatever we lose is going to come back in greater form.
Yeah.
If we allow ourselves to continue to go through that process. I love that.
But see, me going through that with my kid also made me understand it and recognize it so I could try to avoid it with my wife.
That's good.
Because the very first year I was with my wife, I traveled. This was before I converted my company into a management company only. And this is where I was able to put people in my place and pull myself back out.
Okay.
This was 8 years ago now. 7 years ago. The first year I was working in 5 different states. Pennsylvania is actually where I proposed, or the time frame is where I proposed. I proposed in San Antonio, but Pennsylvania, I literally was flying back every weekend. But I was only seeing my wife for an entire year. I was only seeing her on the weekends. I would either fly her up there, or I'd fly me back here. Either way. And then along those time frames, I was getting to spend with the kids, but still same situation. 4 weekends a month. And I had to start deciding, is that what I'm going to continue for the next 50 years? 40 years, whatever it is? And so I made decisions, and I made a lot of risky moves to transition my company into a position where I could pull myself out of it. And then, like I told you, I transitioned it that year. I went very aggressive on my transition. And when I was able to put some people in my place, and I managed, I trained them, managed them, got them to the point where they need to be. I developed the trust between client, company, all that stuff. I put all those things in place, new operating systems and everything. Once I was able to do that and pull myself back out of the equation, like I told you, I haven't left my house since, in 7 years now.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty good.
Because I recognized it with my kid situation, I didn't want to repeat it with the wife situation. And so I knew that I had to go extremely hard, extremely fast to situate myself in a manner that I could be present for my family now. Because now it all came together. Got married, got custody. I was still out of town a little bit, but then I was able to fix it. And then, like I said, I came home and haven't had to leave home since.
I think that's awesome that you said out of everything you built, it all came back to family. Everything you built, it all came back to the small core group of people that are closest to you. That's your motivation for, hey, I'm learning this so I can do better in this area. I'm learning that so I can do better over here. And it all matters to you.
Yeah. To me, the dedication to the family part is what really drove me to making those type of risky moves. Because I was willing to risk the job, but I wasn't going to risk my family.
Interesting.
I was willing to lose that, but I wasn't going to lose my family. Because when I married her and I got custody of my kid back and everything, which she helped me with that. So that was probably a key factor in me achieving that. And so when all that took place, I realized where my time and my presence needed to be. And it wasn't over here chasing money, because I could make money without that shit. But over here, these are the things that I started realizing, especially since I went through it with the whole kid situation. These are the things I realized that I wanted the most.
I like that.
And that's what I went and I transitioned everything for, because I was fighting for this time and this presence.
Being where your feet are. Andy says that.
Yep.
Be where your feet are.
Oh yeah.
Andy, that's your mentor.
Andy speaks a lot about being present.
Yeah. Be where your feet are. So, man, I got one more question for you to wrap it up. And because, as you know, our audience, they want what you got. They want freedom. You know freedom because you're living it right now. So tell me, what would you do? What are 3 things that you would tell your younger self if you had to do it all over again? Whatever that is learned, what you've learned, what you have to overcome, whatever. What are 3 things that you would tell yourself, your younger self?
First one I would say, don't chase the money, chase yourself.
Okay, I like that.
Chase yourself in a development mentality.
Like
whatever your skill sets is. I mean, everybody's got different skill sets, right?
Like
so whatever your skill sets is, whatever your passions are, whatever it is that drives you to just enjoy life, whatever that is, chase being great at it. Be the best at whatever that is. For me, it was construction. That was my path into the door. Okay. That was my first path. So I just needed to be the best version of whatever they were looking for. I needed to be the best. Okay. And so I became the best at that, in my opinion. Okay. And my performance carried me that far. So I was probably one of the best, yes. Okay. So, and the second thing is pay attention to where you're placing your time. Because it was for many years I didn't pay attention to where my time was going. So I wasted a lot of it.
Because you're young. They say youth, what does they say? Time is wasted on the youth or something. There's a saying.
Literally my entire 20s was, that was a wash.
That's tradition though.
That's
right?
10 years. My entire 20s, and it's probably a stigma. I don't know.
No, it's tradition.
But I think so.
Go to college, screw it off, have all the sex,
that
drugs,
is the narrative.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if you can change that, you're going to get ahead so much further and faster in life. It's unreal. Yeah. Because learning it later is actually harder. Yeah. Learning it at 40, what you could have learned at 20.
Yeah. You don't have to do it, guys. You don't have to fit the narrative, the traditional narrative. No. You got a real life example right here. You don't have to do that.
You're not going to lose anything by focusing on yourself for 10 years between 20 and 30, I promise you. You're nothing but gains. And we don't realize it. That's the problem. We don't realize it.
Well, now
not enough people even talk about it.
Well, we're talking about it now.
Yep. And the third thing is, the final thing would be, pay attention to who you're spending your time with. Oof. And that, again, I lost that game.
Come on.
Because 20s and 30s, I was with the wrong people.
Come on.
I'm talking about the drinkers, the drug dealers, the partiers, the people that didn't give a shit about anything. Like, that's the people I was around at the time frame. And it got me nowhere.
Oh, man. Hey, I can say the same thing, man. We talk about it all the time. Proximity equals power.
Proximity is... if I knew what the word proximity was when I was 20, bro, I would have literally wrote that shit on my chest every day.
Proximity.
I needed to be around better people, and I did not understand that. I did not know it. Nobody taught me that until probably into my 30s. I got closer to management, and management started making sense to me. That's probably where I really learned about being around the right people. Mm-hmm. But in my 20s, all the way to 30, it was worthless. Yeah. I was around the worst people, the worst places, worst environments, and wasting my time.
And all that plays on your mindset, fellas, ladies.
And all we can do now is look back at it and tell the story of it, but and educate who's coming up on that phase of their life. But
JJ, man, I appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Where can they find you on what's your social?
IG, I'm at James Durmon. Simple as that. Same thing on YouTube and TikTok.
YouTube and TikTok. At James Durmon. And hey, guys, be looking for the Synergy drink coming out. This bad boy is coming up the ranks real quick. It's going to take some places on some people out there.
Yep.
That's what we're looking forward to. This man is up and coming real fast. Man, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time, hey, sports is life. Life doesn't happen to you. It happens from you. Peace out.